It was supposed to be a normal night in the woods, another Expedition Bigfoot investigation under the stars. But then, without warning, the cameras stopped rolling. The crew abandoned their site and refused to speak about what happened. No one explained why. Now, years later, Ronny LeBlanc has finally revealed the truth. That night, something massive and upright crossed behind them, moving faster than any bear or man could. The cameras captured only one frame before every light and battery died at once. And by morning, their camp was destroyed. Make sure you're subscribed, because what Ronnie described that night will send chills down your spine. It began like any other field shoot. Ronny LeBlanc and the Expedition Bigfoot team had set up camp deep within a stretch of Oregon forest that had no official trails and no cell signal. It was the kind of place where sound carried for miles and where, according to local hunters, the trees sometimes moved at night. Ronnie, the team's wildlife expert, wasn't new to strange noises or flickering eyes in the dark. He'd spent years debunking myths and tracking real animals mistaken for monsters. But that night would shatter every bit of logic he relied on. By sundown, the crew had set up thermal drones and perimeter sensors near a clearing where multiple two-legged bear sightings had been reported. At 12:48 a.m., the first motion alert came through. Something heavy was pacing just beyond the lights. The footsteps were spaced far apart, the rhythm steady and purposeful. It wasn't running, but it was moving with intent. They assumed it was a large elk until the next reading came in. 7 feet off the ground. That's chest height, not muzzle height, Ronnie whispered. Then came the sound, an echoing whistle from somewhere high on the ridge. Seconds later, another whistle answered from the opposite side of camp. Everyone froze. Wildlife doesn't whistle in sync. The fog thickened, and the forest went still. That's when the cameraman caught a glimpse of something between the trees, a shape that seemed to glide rather than walk. He swung the lens around, the autofocus catching a single frame of motion before the monitor erupted in static. Ronnie turned, flashlight trembling, and saw it for less than 2 seconds. A massive silhouette striding behind the tree line, upright, broad-shouldered, and gone in a blink. The ground shook as it vanished into the dark. Every piece of equipment powered down at once. Lights, drones, even the radios. "Shut it down," Ronnie ordered. "Now." That was the last footage they shot that night. What they didn't realize yet was that this single blurred frame, the only proof they had, would haunt the entire team for years to come. When the crew finally got back to camp, the air felt different, thick, heavy, charged. Every member was pale and silent. They sat around the dim glow of their last working lantern, watching the single frame play over and over again on Ronnie's laptop. In that blurred image, just behind the crew, a massive, upright shape could be seen mid-stride. Even with motion distortion, the scale was undeniable. Over 7 feet tall, shoulders almost as wide as a door frame, and legs longer than any human's proportions. The thermal signature burned bright orange, alive with heat. No one spoke for nearly a minute. Then the audio engineer, his voice trembling, asked the question no one wanted to. If it was that close, how didn't we hear it? The answer was worse than silence. The recording's background noise had dropped to 0 just before the figure appeared. No wind, no insects, no forest ambience. Like the world held its breath, Ronnie said later. They agreed to pack up at first light, but that decision came too late. Around 3 a.m., strange noises began echoing from the ridge above them. Slow knocks, evenly spaced, followed by a high-pitched whistle that faded into the distance. It didn't sound animal. It sounded intentional. Ronnie raised his flashlight toward the sound, and for a moment saw the fog shift unnaturally, as if something massive was moving through it. Then came the smell, a pungent, earthy odor like decayed moss and wet iron. "It hit like a wave," he said. "You could taste it." Seconds later, something slammed against the far tent, collapsing it inward. The crew scattered. One man tripped over a camera rig and shouted that he saw eyes in the tree line, 2 glowing amber orbs reflecting the lantern light. By sunrise, their sight was a wreck. Tents flattened, tracks everywhere, equipment cracked and bent. What shocked them most wasn't what was destroyed, but what was missing. Their hard drives, the main thermal drone, and Ronnie's notebook, all gone. It was as if whatever had come through wanted to erase any trace that it had ever been there. Back at the production headquarters, tension filled the editing suite. The Oregon shoot was supposed to deliver the season's biggest breakthrough, but instead, it had turned into chaos. When the crew returned with half their footage missing and the other half filled with static, Discovery executives immediately flagged the material as unstable. Ronny LeBlanc sat in silence as technicians tried to restore the thermal data, but no matter how many times they scrubbed it, the same eerie result appeared. One clear frame of the figure, followed by complete system failure. "It's like something overloaded the sensors," the editor said. Whatever that was, it wasn't natural. Executives demanded answers. They questioned the crew's professionalism, suggesting maybe the fear of the woods had gotten to them. But when one technician ran a frequency analysis on the corrupted footage, something unexpected surfaced. A low hum in the background, too rhythmic to be random. It pulsed at exact 1-second intervals, like a heartbeat. "That's mechanical or biological," Ronnie muttered, "and neither should be possible on that wavelength." Behind the scenes, Discovery's compliance team stepped in. Within 24 hours, all unedited footage from Oregon was seized for review. Ronnie received a corporate memo instructing him not to discuss the incident publicly. The team's group chat was deleted overnight. "They acted fast, too fast," Ronnie said later, almost like they were expecting something to happen. Crew morale disintegrated. One camera operator quit the next day, claiming he'd been followed home by something he heard breathing outside his window. The audio tech refused to work nights again. By the end of the week, Expedition Bigfoot had lost half its Oregon crew. In private, Ronnie replayed that single frame until the pixels blurred. He wasn't sure what scared him more, the figure in the shot, or the way everyone suddenly wanted it to disappear. For the first time in his life, he began to wonder if Expedition Bigfoot had captured more than just evidence of a creature. Maybe they'd captured something the network didn't want the world to see. A few weeks after the Oregon shoot was sealed off, Ronnie couldn't let it go. He'd seen enough strange things on Expedition Bigfoot, but this was different. There had been evidence, and now it was gone. He decided to go back. No production crew, no network oversight, just him, a local guide, and a small camera kit. "I didn't care about filming," he said later. "I just needed to know if it was still there." The forest welcomed him with silence. Not peaceful silence, predatory silence. The same heavy atmosphere he remembered from that night pressed down like a weight. As they retraced the path to the clearing, Ronnie noticed small details most people would miss. Branches bent backward at chest height, piles of rocks stacked deliberately along the trail, and deep impressions in the mud that had hardened over time. "They weren't random," he said. "Something had marked that territory." When they reached the old camp, the remnants were still there. The metal poles of a collapsed tent, fragments of shredded nylon, and, astonishingly, one of the lost trail cameras half buried under moss. It was cracked open, but the SD card slot was empty. "Someone had taken it," Ronnie muttered. "Or something." They set up a temporary base and decided to stay one night. Around 2:30 a.m., 3 sharp knocks echoed from the valley below. Ronnie froze. Then, faintly, 3 more answered from the opposite ridge. The pattern was identical to what they'd heard years ago. His guide whispered, "It's calling back." Moments later, a low growl rolled through the trees, so deep it vibrated in their chests. The guide swore he saw movement, a shadow taller than a man weaving between the trunks. "Don't chase it," Ronnie warned. They stood their ground, lights off, listening as the sound circled them once, twice, then faded into the dark. At dawn, they found a single footprint pressed perfectly into the damp soil beside their tent, 19 inches long. Perfect toe definition, no claw marks. And this time, Ronnie didn't take a plaster cast. He just stared at it. "Because if I did," he said quietly, "something tells me I wouldn't have made it out of there." When Ronnie returned from his solo trip, he brought back only 2 things: the broken trail camera and a haunted look that even his closest friends couldn't ignore. He refused to speak to the press, refused to answer the network's calls. But word got around that he'd found something out there, something that made him want to walk away from Expedition Bigfoot entirely. Weeks later, the truth started to leak. A technician from the post-production team, who asked to remain anonymous, revealed that Discovery had locked away all Oregon footage under a new classification, Project Ember. The term didn't appear in any of the the company's archives, and no one on the show's staff could access the files again. "That's not how network storage works," Ronnie said. "They didn't archive it, they buried it." Then came the strangest part. A single still image began circulating on cryptid forums late one night, an unedited thermal shot that matched the missing footage's description. In the center stood a hulking silhouette, head down, with arms nearly to its knees. The signature glowed hot, 108 degrees Fahrenheit, far too warm for an animal in cold air. Within 12 hours, the post vanished. The account that shared it was deleted, and the URL returned a 404 error. Ronnie tried contacting the editor who'd last handled the data. The number was disconnected. Later, he received an email from an unknown address. It contained only one line: "Stop looking for what doesn't want to be found." The message felt more like a warning than a threat. "I realized," Ronnie said later, "this wasn't about proving Bigfoot anymore. It was about staying alive." He'd seen networks cover up bad footage before, but never like this. Never with fear behind it. And when he finally got word from another crew member that even their backup drives were physically destroyed in transit, Ronnie stopped asking questions. "They don't erase evidence unless they're afraid of what it proves," he said. "That's when I knew whatever walked behind us that night wasn't just a creature. It was something someone didn't want the world to know existed." After the Oregon incident, Ronnie tried to return to normal life, but the shadows of that night followed him everywhere. He'd wake up drenched in sweat, swearing he heard those same heavy knocks outside his window. At first, he brushed it off as paranoia, until neighbors began asking about the strange noises echoing through the woods behind his house. It was the same rhythm, he said. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more. He changed his number after receiving anonymous calls at odd hours. The line would click once, followed by faint breathing, human but distorted, as if coming through layers of static. When he finally confronted Discovery about whether anyone else had reported similar issues, they denied everything. "No one's contacting you, Ronnie," an executive insisted. "You're just stressed." But the strange activity only escalated. His laptop's webcam light began flickering randomly, even when unplugged. One night, he woke to his back door wide open and muddy footprints on the porch. Barefoot, enormous. Police found no sign of forced entry. "You could see where something stopped, turned, and left," he said quietly. Meanwhile, fans online began connecting the dots. A few claimed to have intercepted fragments of the Oregon footage on leaked servers, though none could prove authenticity. One forum user uploaded a file titled "The Truth Frame." In it, the blurred silhouette from Ronnie's lost footage was surrounded by faint, smaller heat signatures, as if several figures were standing just beyond the trees. The post disappeared within minutes, replaced by a blank thread labeled "Access Denied." Ronnie stopped sleeping. He covered his windows, moved his desk to face the door, and kept a flashlight and camera by his bed. "I used to think we were the hunters," he said during a rare live stream. "Now, I know we were the bait." That night, his broadcast abruptly cut out mid-sentence. When the feed returned, the screen was empty, just static, and the faint sound of 3 slow knocks echoing through the dark. The weeks after that night left Ronnie unraveling. Sleep became a stranger. Every creak of his house sounded like something stalking outside. He started hearing the same rhythmic 3 knocks that had echoed through the Oregon woods, on walls, on glass, sometimes on the ground beneath him. "At first, I thought I was losing it," he admitted later, "but when my neighbor said she heard it too, I knew it wasn't in my head." Soon, the strange incidents escalated. His motion lights would trip at exactly 3 a.m., but whenever he checked, the yard was empty, except for footprints too large to be human, pressed deep into the wet earth. He tried setting up trail cameras again, but the memory cards always came back blank. "It's like it knew how to stay invisible," he said. Then came the calls. Late at night, from blocked numbers, a faint static hum followed by breathing. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Ronnie recorded one of them, but when he replayed it, all that remained was a distorted growl beneath the static. He sent the clip to an audio engineer he trusted. The man called back a day later and simply said, "Don't send me that again." Even his technology turned against him. His laptop's camera light flickered randomly, even when closed. Files vanished from his desktop. Emails he never wrote appeared in his sent folder. each one empty, addressed to himself. Online, fans started whispering about a cursed episode, claiming fragments of the missing Oregon footage had leaked on underground servers. One grainy frame showed multiple heat signatures, 5 this time, circling the original silhouette. Within hours, the post vanished. Ronnie stopped talking publicly after that. He covered his mirrors, unplugged his cameras, and slept with his phone powered off. "You spend your life hunting for proof," he said quietly in one final interview, "and then you realize the proof found you first." By the time Expedition Bigfoot resumed filming, Ronnie was barely holding it together. He showed up quieter, more distant, and refused to camp overnight with the rest of the crew. "I'm done being out there after dark," he told production. But the network pushed back. They needed him. What they didn't know was that Ronnie had already reached out to someone off the record, a contact in Oregon, who claimed to know why the government doesn't talk about those woods. That meeting changed everything. The contact, a former Forest Service worker, told him that for years there had been unmarked zones around Mount Hood, where no research permits were approved and GPS maps glitched out entirely. "You weren't in public land," the man said. "You were in containment territory." Ronnie didn't want to believe it, but the more he looked into it, the more it fit. The electromagnetic interference, the power outages, the locked archives. "We walked into something classified," he said. "We just didn't know it yet." When he brought these findings to the producers, they froze. Within days, Discovery's legal team issued a cease and desist order against any crew member spreading speculative or defamatory statements about government involvement. It was worded like a warning, not a protection. "They were scared of what I might say," Ronnie later recalled. "That's when I realized this went beyond TV." Then came the breaking point. One evening after filming, Ronnie returned to his hotel room to find the door slightly ajar and his bag unzipped. Inside, his field notebook was missing. In its place was a note written on blank paper. "Stop digging, or you'll end up like the others." No one ever figured out who left it. But from that moment on, Ronnie refused to speak about the Oregon incident in public again. He started traveling under aliases, avoiding interviews, and turning down every offer to return for another season. "The woods keep their secrets," he said in one of his last interviews, "but some secrets have people willing to kill for them." Months later, Ronnie received an email from an anonymous address titled "Proof They Couldn't Erase." Attached was a heavily compressed video file, no message, no explanation. His gut told him not to open it, but curiosity won. The footage lasted less than 15 seconds. It showed a shaky night vision shot of a fog-covered clearing. At first, nothing moved. Then, slowly, a massive figure appeared at the edge of the frame, gliding silently from left to right. Its proportions were impossible. Long arms, narrow waist, a head that seemed to slope forward, and just before the clip ended, 2 smaller heat signatures appeared behind it, following in formation. Ronnie froze. He recognized the terrain immediately. It was the same valley from their Oregon site, filmed from a new angle, as if someone else had been recording them that night. "We weren't alone," he whispered. "Someone was out there with us." He took the file to a trusted contact who specialized in metadata analysis. The timestamps matched the exact night Expedition Bigfoot had gone dark. Even worse, the GPS coordinates embedded in the video didn't match their base camp. The footage had been captured from above, likely from a high vantage point or drone, but not one of theirs. "That's military tech," his contact said. "You were being monitored." Before he could dig deeper, the video disappeared from his hard drive, replaced by a single empty folder labeled "Resolve." Within hours, the same anonymous emailer sent one more message: "You've seen enough." The incident rattled him. He realized this wasn't just about what they filmed. It was about what someone else had already known. "We thought we were documenting a mystery," Ronnie said later. "Turns out we stumbled into someone else's secret." After that, he stopped trying to recover the lost footage. "If that was a warning," he said, "I finally heard it." But deep down, he knew there was still one copy out there. Proof that whatever stalked them in Oregon wasn't a legend. It was real, and someone had been watching the whole time. Today, Ronny LeBlanc rarely speaks about Expedition Bigfoot. He keeps to small-town conventions, avoids interviews, and has quietly stepped back from the public eye. When fans ask him why the crew really stopped filming that night, he never gives a straight answer. "Some stories aren't meant to be told," he says says with a weary smile. Not because they're unbelievable, but because they're true. Friends describe him as changed, more cautious, more spiritual, almost haunted. He won't sleep outdoors anymore, not even during daylight. You can't unsee what we saw, he once said. It changes how you hear the world. You start realizing silence isn't peace, it's warning. Rumors persist online that one surviving copy of the Oregon footage still exists, hidden away by a member of the original production crew. Some claim it was sold to a private collector. Others say it's been encrypted and stored off-grid, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Ronnie refuses to confirm or deny it. If it's still out there, he said softly, maybe it's better left buried. But in a recent interview at a small cryptid expo, he finally let his guard slip. That night, it wasn't just one, he admitted. We caught more than we ever wanted to. When asked what he meant, he paused for a long moment, staring into the crowd. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "They hunt in pairs." The room fell silent. Ronnie stood, adjusted his mic, and ended with one chilling line. "We went looking for Bigfoot, but something else found us first." And that was the last time he spoke publicly about Oregon, or about Expedition Bigfoot at all.